The wilderness survival class was not what I expected. First of all, it wasn't just a class. It was a full-on weekend-long camping trip into the middle of nowhere, and only 10 people were enrolled. It was more like a private club than a class. Second, while I had imagined a bunch of nerdy college students like me, the other 8 people were all quite outdoorsy. I mean, they weren't the outdoorsy type that never showers or anything. They were clean and normal looking, but they'd all done lots of camping, and some had even been in the military or been scouts. My friend Bella and I were by far the least qualified to be there. Third, while I'd expected a lot of boring lectures on how to start a fire and what berries you could or couldn't eat, it wasn't like that at all. Our instructor, who went by his last name, Orson, was pretty cool. He'd been a ranger in the military and had degrees in botany and ecology. Orson had this rugged, no-nonsense demeanor that made you want to sit up straight and pay attention. He gathered us in a circle around the campfire on the first night, his eyes scanning each of us as if he were sizing up our potential. "All right, listen up," he began, his voice carrying authority. "This weekend is about more than just survival skills. It's about pushing your limits and working as a team." Bella nudged me with her elbow, her eyes wide with excitement. "This is going to be awesome," she whispered. I nodded, trying to match her enthusiasm, but my stomach was already doing flips. I wasn't sure I was cut out for this. Orson continued, "You'll be split into teams of 2. Each team will be given a map and a list of tasks to complete. The first team to finish all tasks and make it back here wins." A murmur of excitement rippled through the group. I glanced at Bella, who was practically bouncing in her seat. "Claire and Bella," Orson called out, pointing at us. "Your team won." We exchanged grins and high fives, but I couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom. Orson went on to pair up the rest of the group. There was Jake and Lisa, both ex-military, Tom and Sarah, who looked like they could wrestle a bear, and Mark and Jess, who had enough camping gear to outfit an expedition. Once everyone was paired up, Orson handed out maps and lists of tasks. "You'll start at dawn," he said. "Get some rest tonight, you'll need it." Bella and I headed to our cabin, which was more like a glorified tent with wooden walls. We unpacked our gear in silence, the weight of what lay ahead sinking in. "Do you think we can do this?" I asked, breaking the silence. Bella looked up from her sleeping bag with a determined expression. "Of course we can. We just have to stick together and stay focused." I wished I shared her confidence. As we settled into our bunks, I couldn't help but replay Orson's words in my head. Pushing your limits. The next morning came too quickly. The sun had barely risen when Orson blew a whistle to wake us up. We stumbled out of our cabin, groggy but ready. Orson stood by the campfire again, looking as fresh as if he'd slept for 12 hours. "Remember," he said, handing each team a compass. "This is about teamwork and survival. Trust your partner." Bella and I nodded in unison, clutching our map and task list like lifelines. "Ready?" Orson asked. We all nodded. "Go!" Bella grabbed my hand and we sprinted into the forest. The first task on our list was to find a specific type of berry that grew near a stream about a mile away. "Come on," Bella urged, pulling me along as she navigated with the compass. We reached the stream faster than I expected. Bella dropped to her knees and started searching for the berries, while I kept an eye out for any signs of danger. "Got them!" Bella exclaimed, holding up a handful of bright red berries. We marked it off our list and moved on to the next task, building a shelter using only natural materials. As we gathered branches and leaves, I felt a surge of confidence. Maybe we could do this after all. But just as we were putting the finishing touches on our shelter, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the forest. Bella froze, her eyes wide with fear. "What was that?" "I don't know," I replied, my heart pounding in my chest. "But we need to find out." We abandoned our half-finished shelter and ran towards the sound, adrenaline fueling our steps. As we broke through the trees into a small clearing, we saw Jake lying on the ground, clutching his leg, while Lisa frantically tried to stop the bleeding. "Jake!" I shouted, rushing over to him. Bella was right behind me, her face pale but determined. Lisa looked up, her eyes filled with panic. He slipped and cut his leg on a sharp rock. It's bad, Claire. Without hesitation, Bella tore a strip from her shirt and handed it to me. Here, use this to bandage the wound. I nodded and took the fabric, wrapping it tightly around Jake's leg to stem the bleeding. Jake winced but didn't make a sound. We need to get him back to camp, Lisa said, her voice trembling. But the storm, Bella started, glancing at the darkening sky. As if on cue, a deafening crack of thunder echoed through the forest, and the heavens opened up. Rain poured down in sheets, drenching us instantly. The wind howled, making it difficult to hear anything else. We can't move him in this weather, I shouted over the noise. We need to find shelter and wait it out. Bella nodded in agreement. There's a cave nearby. I saw it on the map earlier. Let's go, Lisa said, helping Jake to his feet. We half-carried, half-dragged Jake through the torrential rain, our clothes sticking to our bodies and mud clinging to our boots. The cave was just as Bella had described, a small opening in the side of a hill, barely visible through the downpour. Once inside, we set Jake down gently and assessed our situation. The cave was dark and damp, but at least it was dry. The storm outside raged on, lightning illuminating the entrance every few seconds. We need to keep him warm, Bella said, her voice steady despite the chaos around us. And ourselves, too. She started unbuttoning her soaked shirt. We should all get into one sleeping bag. It's the best way to conserve body heat. Lisa hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. She's right. It's what we learned in training. I followed suit, peeling off my wet clothes and shivering as the cold air hit my skin. We laid out a sleeping bag on the cave floor and helped Jake inside first. Then Lisa and Bella climbed in on either side of him. I squeezed in last, feeling the warmth of their bodies against mine. For a while, we just lay there in silence, listening to the storm rage outside. The sound of rain pounding against the rocks was almost hypnotic. Thank you, Jake finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what I would have done without you guys. We're a team, Bella replied softly. We look out for each other. Lisa shifted slightly, trying to get more comfortable. Do you think Orson will come looking for us? He will, I said confidently. But until then, we need to stay put and stay warm. The minutes stretched into hours as we huddled together in the sleeping bag. Despite the dire circumstances, there was something oddly comforting about being so close to my friends. Claire, Bella whispered after a while. Do you remember that time we got lost in the city? I chuckled softly. How could I forget? We wandered around for hours before finding our way back. Yeah, she said with a smile in her voice. This is kind of like that, but, you know, more life-threatening. Jake laughed weakly. You two have been through a lot together. We have, I agreed. And we'll get through this too. The conversation flowed naturally from there. Stories of past adventures, dreams for the future, even silly jokes to lighten the mood. Despite everything, I felt closer to Bella than ever before. Suddenly a loud crash echoed through the cave entrance. We all tensed up immediately. What was that? Lisa asked nervously. I don't know, I replied, straining my ears for any other sounds. Another crash followed by muffled voices reached us from outside. It wasn't thunder. It was something else entirely. Stay here, I whispered urgently as I wriggled out of the sleeping bag and grabbed a flashlight from my backpack. I crept towards the cave entrance cautiously.